Good evening, everyone. Today is December 13th, Wednesday. It's the Finance and Operations Committee. It is 6:02, and we're in the North Boardroom of the high school. The members of the board that's here, Mrs. Johnson's present, Ms. Brown. We also have Mr. Donovan, Mr. Smith, and we also have,
Jeff Leone.
and
Mike Davey from Energy Efficient Investments.
thank you. And we can start with the meeting. Mr. Donovan, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is to purchase some lighting for our video production program. Mr. Leone is the teacher of that program. Some of you may have been in front of him and his students at times. They can be intimidating, but they're mostly good people. So he will, I'll turn it over to Jeff and he can speak to why we need it now, how long it's been around, et cetera.
Yeah, hi guys. So I just want to make sure you're clear that it's not just lighting. We're basically kind of revamping the studio. You guys have been in there before. The studio has been around since, whenever South was revamped. 2004. So that's how long this lighting in the grid system has been in the studio, and it's been great. It's totally been great. But it's 2023, 2024, and the lighting that we have, the lamps that are in there, they get very hot. So it's very difficult, and I don't even have the kids adjust them anymore just because they just get too hot. The lamps that go into the lights are, some of them are obsolete. They can't even find them anymore. So a lot of the fixtures that we have up in the grid, you can't even find the lights. So over the past few years, it's been in the works. I've been discussing it with my professional advisory council, and they've just come to the conclusion that the studio could definitely use an upgrade. The lights should be LED, which is more cost efficient, energy efficient. They don't get hot, which makes it easier to teach so the kids can actually move the lights around. It's easier for them to kind of move the lights around and adjust it for different types of lighting. We do a lot of, as you guys know, we do a lot of programming for the school district, for the community. We've done stuff with the state. So it's kind of nice to have a little bit better lighting. It's easier to teach the kids. It's what they're using out in the field now. So what we're doing is we're proposing to have the studio, sometimes I feel like the studio isn't, that the space hasn't been taken advantage of. There's a little bit more space in there. So we can have bigger productions in there. So we're going to extend the grid, the pipe grid, and have the curtain that's in there become a 360 curtain. So that way it's better for sound, and the green screen, the projection that you can put behind people, the lighting will be a lot better for that as well. So we can actually have more productions in there for TV and field production, stuff like that.
Ms. Brown, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Comments? Okay, with that said, Mr. Donovan, do you have anything to say?
We have a special revenue fund where we collect money from students that come to our programs, CTE programs. We've been saving that up, so we have the funds available. Those funds are, yes, bless you. Those funds have been specifically set aside for significant purchase such as this to upgrade existing programs. And I think Mr. Leone has followed all the procedures, met with his advisory group, and so I think it is 2004. I'm sure Mr. Smith will tell you that things have changed significantly since then. So the money is available, and in my opinion, I think we should move ahead with the purchase.
Okay, do you agree? Okay. I'll make a motion to recommend to approve the purchase of the new LED lighting for the video production studio from Events United for a cost of $117,837.11 to be charged to the CTE SRF account 2258.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nobody else is here to oppose. Motion carries. So you're all set. That was quick and easy. Thank you. Appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is the high school energy performance contract review.
So Mike Davy is here. And if you recall, back a few years ago, we invested amount of money into improving the energy at the two high schools. So Mr. Davies here to speak to the savings in the process. This is the first time he's come forward, probably try to do this once a year going forward, but COVID kind of slowed things up and made some changes. So Mike is here and he'll speak to it. Anything you'd like to say, Sean, beforehand?
Mike Davy, Energy Efficient Investments. We're based in Merrimack. Back in 2018, the district did an RFP for a company to work with the district on a phased approach to reduce energy costs and improve building equipment such as lighting, HVAC, insulation values. And the high schools were started with, because I think we mentioned they were built in the early 2000s, a lot of fluorescent lights, a lot of HVAC controls that were not as high performing as the current technology. And so the board approved a lease purchase agreement, and the intent was that there would be minimal impact to the budget because the energy savings each year would pay the annual lease appropriation. So there's not a significant tax impact for this project. The results were we saved $510,000 a year from the baseline of 2017. That is with a 34% reduction that's a 17% reduction in energy cost while we're running the equipment more. So one of the things that happened between 2017 and 2021 is the state of New Hampshire, to address the COVID pandemic, put out recommendation that districts increase the ventilation rates and the amount of times we ventilate. And we put in better filtration, so that the better filters that are better for air quality also put more stress on the fans and more horsepower to run. So we saved $500,000 while running the equipment longer and harder than it had ever been done previously. So as we transition back to pre-COVID procedures, these savings will go even higher. This is a quick snapshot of, the 500,000 is directly proportional to a reduction in electric use. New Hampshire has the 49th highest electric cost in the country. Only Alaska has a higher electric cost. There's lots of reasons for that we can talk about but I've been told to keep it brief. So, but as you can see, the baseline is where we were at in kilowatt hours, so 3.5 million kilowatt hours at north and about 3 million kilowatt hours at south back in before the project started, so 2017. And now we're at 2.9 million in 2021, 2.5 million in 2022, and we went down to 3 million at south and 2.5 million. So that's each kilowatt hour is about 19 cents a kilowatt hour here in New Hampshire. So there's a huge economic benefit to reducing your electric usage. Keep in mind, this is while you're running your building 34% more for the better ventilation from COVID. So we're running the building harder, but using significantly less electricity than we did before the project started. And that is a 24% decrease in 2021 at north, a 12% at south, a 34% decrease in 2022, and a 27% at south. One thing that also changed, in addition to the air handlers running a little bit longer, because of the time that the students were out of school during COVID and brought back, there was a lot more summer school at both schools than were previously. So again, we anticipate in 23 and 24, when we present to this committee, again, these numbers are going to be much better if we decrease that summer runtime on the schools. The other thing we did is we put in 99% efficient hot water heaters. So the hot water was about 82% efficient. We replaced all your individual air conditioners, so not the giant air conditioners that do the classrooms, but the ones that do the IT closets, the sort of the miscellaneous areas. Those equipments have a shorter lifespan, and they were experiencing lots of problems. So we replaced some 30 of those smaller air conditioners with a much more efficient one. We replaced the electrical transformers. They were about 95% efficient. We brought them up to 99 efficient, and we replaced about half the HVAC control systems at both buildings and put in better sequencing for more energy savings. We don't finish, though, just by completing the project. We continue to meet with the facilities team monthly to find ways to further increase energy usage, such as reducing ventilation rates. I'm kind of recommending schools start to go back to the pre-COVID ventilation rates and stop with the increased runtime. So a lot of our districts are slowly transitioning back to now that the focus on energy, it's the first 20 years of my career, it was all about return on investment, bringing our energy costs down with a good payback. Then 2019 or 2020, 21, 22, it was all about ventilation rates. Now we're starting to go a little bit back to hey, this is running these air handlers this hard costs a lot of money. Let's start to go back to the way it was before. For those who are interested, the savings at North are equivalent to taking 200 cars off the year, 200 cars a year off the road each year, or the equivalent of 500 homes. So that's the equivalent of just the energy savings impact at North. And then at South, it's 203 cars or 493 homes. So the equivalent energy we've saved here really is taking out a whole neighborhood worth of energy usage. And so the goal of the project or of the district when the RFP was written was to create a long-term plan, focusing on the high school, proving the results out to the board, then finding rebates and grants as they become available. So we were able to work, in addition to implementing many of these things at South and North, at 55 Franklin Street, we put in an energy efficient system using a lot of federal funds, and are currently in the process of doing similar type projects as part of the Birch Hill and Main Dunstable renovations, again, using federal funds and energy rebates. We continue to monitor the monthly usage and transition back to a post-pandemic energy use strategy. A little bit more. So one of the things that's changed that cities should be aware of, the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2022 provided $400 billion in federal funding for projects like this, and they're specifically targeting geothermal heating. So the bill is saying, like, if we had done this project in 2023 as opposed to 2019, and had done, instead of gas hot water heaters and boilers, if we had done geothermal, the federal government will pay 40% of the direct cost. So that starts to make that technology, and they're specifically doing that to reduce climate change. They understand that gas boilers are cheaper, so they're telling you, if you do geothermal here in New England, they'll give you 40% payment. So it's something to consider for future projects. Some of our districts are moving toward geothermal because of that 40%, and it's not just the well field, it's the entire HVAC system, the ductwork, the controls, the electric, the roof. So it's a pretty substantial program. one thing, I know people are skeptical of that technology, okay, geothermal. But if you've been to the liquor store on Coliseum Ave, I actually put a geothermal system in that building when it was built. So next time, if anybody visits there and checks it out, that it's a nice building. And it's also completely heated and cooled with geothermal heating. And the wells are underneath the parking lot. We continue to look at potential grants and rebates and energy savings through lighting controls, insulation, solar, geothermal, and other similar projects. And in terms of what's next on the horizon for this process is continuing to improve the controls at 55 Franklin. So putting that analytics package in to monitor that, finishing construction of the energy efficient equipment at Birch Hill and Main D, which is primarily using federal funds for that portion. And then we're looking at energy auditing to bring back to this group this summer, some options for some future schools that have older technology, Dr. Chris, Bicentennial, and New Searles. And so that'll be the next steps in the process, and as continuing controls improvement. So that's kind of a high level overview on the project and the results thus far.
Brown, do you have any questions?
And the question, do you know, off the top of your head, what was the cost, the upgrades to the water heaters and the transformers when we put those in?
The whole project or just those two line items?
Or yeah, the project, I guess.
The entire project, I believe, was 7.7 million, and it was financed over 20 years with a lease. I don't recall. I have those numbers that I can email you. I just don't recall what the specific breakouts were of those numbers.
And maybe this is Mr. Smith. Was this during one of this? This was when we did the upgrade here in the high schools, or when was that timeline?
What he's talking about is the work that was done at the two high schools.
Right. But when was that work that was done? Was that part of another project?
If we're still talking about I'm a little confused. We're talking about this project. We just finished this past year the work for the two high schools. Under what he's talking about. Started 2 years ago.
Yeah. So 2021, 2022. Got the majority of the savings from the lighting, and then we finished out some punch list stuff by the end of this year. But the savings started in 2021, so the project was done and started in 20, completed in 20, and completed in 22. But you had a lot of the progress done in 21, calendar year 21. And so it's in fact these lights that were here above our heads were part of it. These control systems were part of it. So it was a comprehensive lighting project and controls, transformers, and hot water heaters at both high schools.
And so just to break it down by numbers, the cost of the project was about 7.7 million,
Yep.
and the savings is approximately to be about $500,000 a
Yes,
year.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So it cost us $7.7 million for lights, heating. And what else was the rest of it?
Electrical transformers.
Electrical transformers.
Yep.
And we leased it.
Yes,
So at the end of the lease, what happens?
own it.
We own it.
Yes.
We don't have to buy anything out.
No.
Okay.
But the equipment will be 20 years old.
That was actually going to be my next question. What will be the longevity of the equipment after that?
But
At that point, will it last the 20 years of the?
Yes.
Okay, because it was financed over 20 years.
Yes, it's a 20-year note of about 6 million. Some of the savings, some of the money we got back with rebates. So the note's around 6.2 or something like that. So we pay and I can note it when we go to the operating, but we pay about $425,000 a year towards that note. So, but the interesting thing was, like when I saw this, I said, well, Mike, you guaranteed me I'd save that much money. My electricity bill didn't go down $420,000. So, but what happened was, as Sean said and Mike reiterated, We ran the machines more, we put in filters. So had we not done that, then our cost of electricity would have gone way up. Our cost of electricity is still around the same number for the last 4 or 5 years. And the price per kilowatt hour went way up, and the amount we used went way up, and our total dollars in the budget are about the same.
So it was kind of fortuitous for the timing. It was it's unplanned, but worked out.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't assume that COVID was going to take place. And like we said, when we didn't have students in, there was savings during that time period, but then we brought the students back. And when we ran the 2 summer school programs, Sean said, I'm never doing that again. And when I said, why not? And he said, because of the energy costs. And think about it. I mean, it's 90 degrees out, and we've got 2 big schools running AC. So,
Maybe we
but-
could talk about consolidating the students to one school. That might be a little.
and that's what we'd always had done, and that's what we started doing again last year, so.
Now, so at the end of 20 years, we paid off the lease. And if we have to replace anything, what do? Are we leasing again certain items or when? So the lease is done in 2030. We did it in 19. 29 would be 10, so 39, 2039.
Yeah.
I know, I might not be alive by then. Who knows? I'm 70.
Yeah, I mean, the equipment will still be here, it'll still be working. It's like you have a furnace at your house, you could pull it out every 10 years and get more efficient one if you want. But you got to do the math to say, does it make sense if I buy another $5,000 furnace? Am I going to save that money over the term that I own it? If it isn't, you're not going to change it, right?
I didn't even want to change the one I had. But my chimney cracked and I put in a new efficient one. I don't like it. I like the old one better. Mr. Smith?
The other beauty of doing it this way is it didn't cost the taxpayers money. It's from a lease. I mean, technically, it kind of sort of did because we pay it off, but the savings that we will realize as we're moving forward, that's offset by what we're paying every month or every year. The other thing is, had we not done this, then we'd still have all the old equipment in place. And you've heard me talk time and time again about investing in the facilities and putting aside a certain amount of money just to avoid those huge bonded projects, every 20 or 30 years. So this is one way to try to avoid doing that. And I think it was successful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Have a good holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Davy.
Merry Christmas. Okay. Now we're talking about the deferred maintenance and capital plan for 2025.
So that was a good segue, actually.
I know,
Talking
I
about
was just
capital
thinking that.
stuff. So deferred maintenance, first I'll talk about what we completed this past year. This is all in a memo I sent in for the board package. But so this past year, we funded the replacement of the kitchen at Franklin Street, actually a building of the kitchen at Franklin Street. So that was completed. We put about 150,000 into that. That was also leveraged with some other bonded and ESSER funding. We then paved the front bus loop and a parking area in front of Fairgrounds Elementary. So that was completed. We did 2 parking areas at Franklin Street School and also a section of the fire lane behind Broad Street. So those were completed. We've got a couple of things still ongoing. One is the refurbishment of the cooling tower in this building. They're probably going to be done in the next month. Let's consider that a midlife refurbishment. So it's 22 years old now. And then at Main Dunstable Birch Hill, we've talked about that project. We purchased the energy efficient boilers that are going to go into those 2 schools because at the time, the bonded funds were insufficient to cover that. So that's kind of what we did. I think we put the money we had to good use. We have $600,000 this year. And this is what I propose we do with it. Most of this was already in the plan, so I'm just kind of carrying it forward from our original plan. The running track at this school is starting to show some wear and tear. It needs an overlay, the overspray, take care of some cracks. That's about 200,000. The is one of those, another one of those things that we need to do to defer big bonded projects, but take care of all the, what we call storefronts in the classrooms. So that's the windows and the door that go out from the classrooms to the outside. The metal, and that's actually rotting, rusting. We need to replace those. We've already did that several times in the past 4 or 5 years. So this just continues that. This past year, we replaced the building automation controls at Bicentennial. We'd like to do that at Dr. Crisp. We are taking advantage of the main Dunstable Birch Hill project by using one of the units that provides cooling, heating and cooling for the main office in those buildings. Those we actually replaced less than 5 years ago, so there's plenty of life in them. We're going to transfer one of those to New Searles to take care of the media center. And then finally, if you've driven around the North High School here, you've seen cracks in the pavement and dips in the pavement as you go around the fire lane, that sort of thing. So we're proposing to take care of the worst of that. Have a bigger project later on in capital planning to deal with that a little more extensively. So for next year, this is really the meat of what I'm looking for approval on tonight is the following budget. 1.135 million. I always ask for something like that, and we usually get half or less than that. It's okay. I'm just putting forward the needs that I think we need to present. The first project is to replace incandescent light bulbs in the 2 auditoriums. You heard the CTE teacher talk about having to replace his lights. Well, these are the same vintage, 20 plus years ago. And I mean, there's incandescent lighting is being phased out nationwide. Part of it's the heat. If you remember trying to change out your light bulbs and your lamps, if you do it when the light's been on, it's really super hot. That's a lot of wasted energy. So we're going to be going to LED. Want to install motion detectors in the high schools, replace more storefronts at Bicentennial, develop a facility master plan. I think that's something that's long overdue. It's as long as I'm around here and Gary Connors is around, we have a pretty good sense for what the facilities are. But we're both going to retire someday, so I think it'd serve the city well to have a master plan, facilities master plan, that looks at every aspect of the facilities and kind of lay out when to expect to have to invest funds into the buildings and the grounds. Additional pavement repairs at this school proposed. Replacing the roof on the older wings at Amherst Street. When we did that project, seems like yesterday, but that was 1998. We replaced a lot of the roofs, but there are a couple of roofs we didn't touch. So that's what that project is. Money down for the tennis courts at the South High School. Right now they're okay, but there are cracks starting to surface that is considered kind of preventive maintenance. Primary boiler controllers, we've had that project in our queue for a long time. We replaced them at the South High School. We then salvaged one of them failed. We salvaged the other 2, and we have them kind of on the shelf here just in case. The old boiler controllers are no longer supported by the manufacturer, so this is another thing we're trying to be proactive with. And then this has also been in the list for a long time is the small engine labs at South High School. They have an overhead door right now. They just open it. So if they're running the engine inside, that's how they ventilate. So it's been on my list for a long time. People haven't complained about it. They've opened the door and everybody's fine. They run their engines outside, but it's still up on our list of things to do. So that's all totals 1.135 million. There's about 12 million in the deferred maintenance backlog. Give you a sense for that. Maybe I'll pause for a second if you have any questions about deferred maintenance. This is all also summarized on the spreadsheet that was in the package.
Do you have any questions?
I think it looks like Mr. Smith was very thoughtful about prioritizing these items. The storefronts, for, at Bicentennial. That was the only thing that kind of stuck out to me. Was that something, when we did one of our ESSER funds, was that not one of the buildings that was
No.
addressed with that for?
We've used deferred maintenance funds in the past. Honestly, we've done this twice so far. Typically, we've done 3 or 4. Think how many classrooms, the whole school has doors going outside. So it's going to take a few more years for us to catch up.
And just, I mean, I expect just general wear and tear and rust and that kind of thing. Like how long between times do you have to cycle through and fix those kind of things up as an exterior entrance?
Well, Bicentennial was built in 1976, thus the term bicentennial. And all these storefronts date from back to that
This is the
period. So
original.
we got a
one.
lot of
Okay.
years out
That
of
is,
those things.
that's actually excellent news. All right, thank you.
A lot of them built at the time as things were, it contained asbestos. So the flat panels you see when you look at them, that's made out of asbestos. So that adds cost to the actual project.
Thank you.
On develop the facility master plan, should that read basically develop Nashua School District Facility Master Plan so we know it's the school district? And the city doesn't put us in their master plan. Is that because we're autonomous from them and they have no jurisdiction over us?
Maybe. I really don't know. I know that they have their master plan.
I know they have
It
the
does
master
not
plan.
include the schools. So whoever made that decision, I wasn't involved. I mean, it's something we definitely need. When I review their master plan, it's not a lot of meat to it. So it's kind of, I don't want to talk it down too much. Ours would be very focused on the buildings and the different systems that are in the buildings, how long they're expected to last, based on that life expectancy, what it might cost. We would talk to virtually everybody, the Board of Ed, we talk to the principal, we talk to the teachers, and what do you want in your schools moving forward? It's more than just itemizing what the schools look like and what's in them. It's trying to develop a vision for the future for the schools.
So it's going to be basically what are our needs and our priorities in keeping the schools up and running without falling behind,
Yes.
okay? Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, and the thing that you have to do when you do this, you can have all the wants and needs you want. You have to factor in the financial piece. So our bonding plan for the city, should tie into the 2 master plans. So we can say, let's say the schools come up with, we need 50 million a year. I'm just making these numbers up. And the city says, well, we have available for bonding 30 million a year. Well, then you're going to have to change your master plan because you're not going to be able to do that unless you can find some funding somewhere else. And maybe there's some options I'm not aware of, but I think it's important. Since the last 7, 8 years, it's been, the high schools are coming off. That will make a lot more money available. Well, we did a big middle school project. We still have bonding capability, but these plans should tie in with the bonding plan. That's really what needs to be done for the sort of future of Nashua capital spending.
Because when we need to bond something, we need to go to the alderman and
Yes.
ask them for the money.
Right.
But other than that, we're basically autonomous from,
We are, but we're not going to get a bond without the alderman.
without the alderman. That's what I'm saying. And I'm wondering if the reason why they kept us out of their master plan is because we're a district in the city, we're a school district within the city, and we're autonomous. And that's why we don't kind of mingle together here. Or an SAU, a school district.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't do it.
No, I was thinking, I like where you're going with this. I do think that they should take into consideration much more of the needs of the school district if they're for the bonding plans for long-term expansion of the city, and take into consideration that we have $12 million backlogged in just the facilities we currently have that need help. And I think that Mr. Smith does an excellent job monitoring things and keeping that list up to date. But every year, more things get added to it and new priorities. And I think that both Mr. Smith and Mr. Donovan have made good point, and you, Ms. Johnson, have made excellent points that it's something that should be considered moving forward. If to take, you want to prioritize schools, you got to prioritize financing them as well.
Exactly, because we're part of the city, but indirectly not part of the city, and they kind of forget us. And
Until they don't want to.
yeah, and the capital improvement committee, those ratings, we don't get those big high ratings like some of the other city projects do. But this is very comprehensive, and I thank you for bringing this to our attention. And you would like us to.
Well, so next we got to hear about capital improvements, right?
I'll talk about the capital projects if you don't mind.
Okay.
So again, to talk about where we've been and where we are currently. We've finished Pennachuck for the most part, but we have sufficient funding left in the middle school project to pay for adding dehumidification, the 2 new classroom wings. So we've, the joint specials already approved that project, and it's about 1.9 million. And that work's gonna start this summer. Actually, April break will start work. McCarthy Middle School is on track. It's on or under budget for the beginning of this next school year coming up. So it's proceeding very well. We fully expect to have funds left over from that as well. As you know, we've begun renovations at Birch Hill and Main Dunstable. That will turn out to be about a 2.5 year project, so it'll be completed in the fall of 2025. They've gone through the first phase was this past summer. But the second phase is really the big phase. It took about a third of the school classroom wing at least, and are currently updating it. So that's approaching almost being ready, but we're not going to occupy that. It won't be ready till after the first year, so we're targeting the school vacation break, the end of February, to do all the transitions, move all the furniture and everything. And then we'll start on the next phase after that. Then school vestibule projects, Dr. Chris and New Searles will also start this spring. Dr. Chris was all just internal to the footprint of the school, so that will most likely be done before the school year starts next year. The New Searles construction involves adding to the building. It's putting the main office between. If you look at the front of New Searles, there's 2 overhangs. So between those, we're putting in basically the new main office. And then as part of that will be the secure vestibule. And then it'll make use of where the office used to be for other purposes. So that's what's going on currently. So for new capital projects, many of these again are repeats of what you've seen previously. The replacement of the artificial turf at Stella's Stadium. If you've seen the memo, you've seen all the reasons for it. One of the tests they do constantly is what they call GMAX test, is for hardness. So when the athletes take a spill, or if you're football players, they're always taking spills, trying to make the surface so it yields a little bit. That's something the Park and Rec measures all the time. There's a lot of other minor issues. Again, that facility is also 20 years old. I believe we did that in 2002, give or take, 2. It was in Mrs. Johnson's backyard, practically. The first fall they opened it, we allowed, Pop Warner football to go in there. One of the restrictions was do not use the public address system Sunday mornings. So a certain alderman at the time was also chair of the board, I think, was the announcer for the Pop Warner, and Sunday morning is blaring away. Mrs. Johnson was not happy. But I think it's settled now, hopefully. It's quieter for you.
Become good neighbors. It was my neighborhood.
Yes.
And I was on the board. I still have the brick from that, and my name is still on the plaque over there. I'm very proud of it.
Used to all just be marshland and trails and things like that, turned into what it is now. So in addition to the field, there are issues with drainage. So we have to, after we pull the old turf up, we have to do some more drainage work. The press box needs work. We may have to replace the rubber roof above the locker rooms. So that's where the number comes from.
Can I ask a question on that? So the press box, that's included in the $1 million, or
Yes.
is that beyond it? Okay. And the thing that actually sticks out to me a lot, we experienced this at the issues with the PA system at graduation, and then also that issues with the at the Powder Puff football game. They were actually not able to do any announcements on the, if you're facing the field, the horn and the PA on the left-hand side. Families actually couldn't hear any of the graduation announcements with lots of crackling and things like that. Is that something that has been checked into or would be part of this plan?
I can't answer that. Again, it's being maintained by Park and Rec. They have not raised that issue with me, but
I will say
I
it
don't
is.
think it's
Yeah.
terribly expensive to fix. So certainly we can fit it in $1 million.
I would actually,
Speakers are wiring or grounds in the wiring. that
as
sort
it
of thing.
seems like it was pretty awful, Ms. Johnson, wouldn't you agree? And I do think the families, both the, athletes for games, but also during, if we're going to continue to use that space for graduation, which worked out nicely, I think it should be addressed sooner than later, even if it was part of a separate project. So I would love to see that looked into.
And also, the day before, it was working fine for North. I'm wondering, and on South Day, it was raining. Remember, it was raining, so I wonder if it might have something to do with the wires getting wet, because it was raining and then it was misting while we were out there. So, and that should be hopefully made sure of, that for graduation, that we don't have that problem again
Okay.
in June.
I believe there's also some,
Good thing Jimmy's here.
I believe there's also some funding left. There's a reserve fund for Stello Stadium that it may not be a lot of money at this point, but I think at one point Bishop Girton was giving us an annual amount, so we can approach them about continuing that. Yes. So this whole million, I don't anticipate would come out of our funds or the city of Nashua's funds. We can divert,
And
get
can I
money
ask,
elsewhere.
and this is hopefully going to be, we're going to just do the undertaking in 2024, you're thinking? Or is this just we're asking for the money and then we'll be planning the project after?
So my plan was to plant the seed tonight, and then I think next Monday we go to the full board, and then bring it to them, and then in January, bring a suggestion to the Board of Ed to request the funds. Or somebody could just suggest it Monday night to request the funds if you think that's the way to do it.
We'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to do that on Monday night if you'd like a motion or to move it forward. I think it seems like it would be a worthwhile priority moving forward. And the sooner we get on top of the Board of Aldermen, the better.
Yes. Okay. So that's this current fiscal year. Next fiscal year, so after the 1st of July, or if you recall, when we put together the Birch Hill Main Dunstable project, we postponed the work at Ledge Street, Fairgrounds, and Charlotte Avenue in terms of replacing or adding dehumidification to the rear wings and to the center wings. So that was, the number kept on going up during the pandemic, but that was pushing $2 million, and we had to cancel that. So look into, see if we can get funding for that. Security replacements, access control is nearly 10 years old. A lot of the components are in their service life. So we'll be looking for funds to do that. And then Santa Life is a system that we've been putting in our schools in the past year. I still haven't heard back from, they were supposed to install a system to monitor how that's working at fairgrounds. And they're, the last I hear, which is a couple of weeks ago, they were still putting that together. So we have a little bit of time. I want to verify it actually does exactly what they say it will. I'm sure you do too. But we have time on that, between now and the capital plan, which usually in January we go forward for that. So I'm going to push on for that. If you look on the spreadsheet, you'll see other projects there, other elementary schools. You're well familiar with Mount Pleasant, keeping it or closing it. If we keep it open, then there should be some expense put there. Bicentennial, New Searles, and Dr. Chris are three other schools that are in the queue for capital improvements. By the time we get to them, they'll be 30 years old since they were last touched. That's it. So then I recommend for a motion that you approve the FY25 deferred maintenance and capital improvement documents as presented.
And just a point, so you're gonna approve it here, it'll go to the full board. That doesn't mean you're approving the funding, because you don't have the capability to do that at the board. But for the deferred maintenance piece, the way that works is we, the Board of Ed, approve the budget, the operating budget. This is added to the operating budget after we've approved it. It's not part of what the Board of Ed approves. It's added at the city level. So that's why we can approve this. It's a suggestion and it goes over there. But then as part of the budget process, we will get a dollar amount. It's probably not going to be 1.1 million. This year it was 600,000. That was with the help of Alderman Dowd. If the original number in the budget was 100,000 is all that the city put in. So it got bumped to 600, which is at least reasonable. But so, like I said, you're approving Sean's suggestions. There's no funding attached to it because that comes at the city level.
And also, when we go to the Capital Improvement Committee in January, it's usually about the middle of the month, they want the Board of Ed to have approved this plan before they take action on it.
And so we are approving both the deferred maintenance and the capital improvement plan in this one motion.
On the Mount Pleasant, has anybody actually come up with a figure rather than like, well, we've done this in 2017, this is what we needed to do, but we're 2023 now. I know things have changed in that school. I know that there's probably more needs in that school that has to be done now. And I tried to get a realistic number and a plan, because to tell me what you need in 2017, it's not feasible now. And so I can't see putting all that money in to that school. I think that school could be used better as a community center like we've done with the Arlington, given the fact that Preston Smith's report that he gave us, and people don't want to listen to that report or read that report or understand that report, because when you listen to everything, we don't have the private homes. We're building more and more apartments. There's no green space for kids in these apartments. And when they talk about being affordable, well, I looked at the price of a studio in one of them. I think it was like $1,700 for a studio apartment. Please tell me, is that affordable for the average person in today's society? And that's just a studio. That doesn't even give you a bedroom. That gives you a living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom for probably 400, 500 square feet. So when I think about all this, I don't believe that we should close 6 schools, but I think probably unless the student population improves, and that's why I always ask for the projections, I can't see being able to run all these elementary schools. It's not going to be feasible with the amount of students that we're not going to have. And whether people like it or not, that's the reality of it all. And so when people would come to me and say to me, look at the student population, but the costs are going up to educate the students, and then a judge makes a determination how much it's going to cost to educate a student, but he doesn't have the law behind him. He can't, he's only there to interpret the law, not to make a law, throw a number out. So I hope that the figures come out and the board sees exactly what the truth is between Mount Pleasant School and the needs of that school is going to be. I'm just throwing that out. I voted to keep it open because I felt, and I'm going to say it again, it's going to be a nightmare with the transitioning of the middle school projects, of kids moving from one school to the other in the neighborhood. You don't need to throw elementary schools on top of this whole thing. You need to settle the middle school kids down first, and then in this time frame, work on your redistricting of your elementary schools. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So, with that said, I will make a motion to request that the Board of Education approve the FY25 deferred maintenance and capital improvement documents as presented.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Anything else, Mr. Smith?
That's it for me.
Thank you. If I don't see you,
Very
have
much.
a Merry Christmas.
Probably see you next Monday night.
Okay.
Board
So
of Ed.
should I take it back?
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
We're into the financial report.
A quick credit card update.
Okay.
Take long at all. You have in front of you, there's the credit card report. It's through October as opposed to just September, but you can see the spending through the July-September quarter was about half of what it was the previous quarter and less than the first. And significant of the 16,000 spent, 9,000 was for the QuickBooks software. So other than that, as I've said before, we try to keep the number of purchases with the credit card at a minimum, force people to go through the requisition process, which has various controls in place. So per the policy, we bring it forward every quarter, but as I said, if you take that 9,000 out, we spent about 6,000. And it lists what the items are.
Questions? Okay. That was quick. So now we'll go to the financial report, and then after that, the transfer report.
Yes, so we'll look at the November month-by-month one. As you recall, we did not have a meeting in October, so it's sort of a 2-month review. So we are, at this point, 5/12 through the fiscal year, which is 41%, and we're 3/10 or 30% through the school year. So if you flip to the back page of this, we've spent thus far 33.43%, which is right in between the 30 and the 41. So that's sort of the first sort of review I take just to make sure that's fine. As I mentioned many times, the wages are the biggest expense. They're slightly higher in November than October, but we had 5 weekly payrolls in November. We only had 4 in October. They both had 2 biweekly pays, which is where most of the money goes. Overtime slightly higher than the last couple months, but we have Biddy basketball starting, so we have more overtime associated with that. There may be more facility rentals also. The wages per diem line at this point in time, it's pretty much paras covering for teachers. That's what most of that 34,000 is. The additional hours, 9,000 of that is the music program. We spend about 9,000 a month that we pay to the instructors. The rest are various PD or programs being managed by the district. Stipends this month is higher. It's 46,000. 38 of that is the middle school coaches. You'll see the high school coaches show up in December. And the rest of it is sort of the head teachers. We pay the head teachers so much per month, and that's typically about 8,000 or 9,000 a year. And the retirement and separation pay, looks like we're pretty, I think we have all the teachers paid. The number is higher this month. We had a 40-year employee retire. She was a custodian and custodial manager. So about 28,000 of that 34,000 was her retirement. The rest of the smaller amounts are when people leave and they have vacation time, so you have to pay out their vacation time. Okay, other than that, fringe benefits, city thing, you'll see educational assistance, the last line in that series. That number, we're beginning to see the end of the first semester, the students that, teachers have taken classes, so you'll see typically November, December, it'll go up, it'll drop back down in January, February. Professional and technical services, the staffing service line, it's the fourth one down, that's 121,000, that's ESS, that's that company that we've been using to provide substitutes. We're seeing a slight uptick. We certainly don't have as many substitutes as we want. That is going to be an interesting part of our budget for the 24-25 year, how we're going to deal with that going forward. And then the other services, the pupil supports, the OTPT. I didn't get a chance to, the one number I want to look at, the bottom line on that first page, contracted services, is 405,000. Seems kind of high to me for 1 month, so I'll go back and look at it to make sure. It's typically, those are services typically requested by facilities, Sean's crew, and IT, but I'll verify to make sure that they're in the right place. On page 2, the property services. So the electricity, heating, gas, and water, took a look at those, kind of lined them up with where we were at the same time last year. They're pretty close, not a big change in any of the accounts at this point. I mean, heating, gas, you get all your big expenses December through April, so you wouldn't expect much there. The rest of it is various maintenance contracts, most of which are through plant operations, and those at this point are fine. On schedule, other services, telephone, as I reviewed that compared to last year at the same time, just about the same. Dues and memberships, you do see in the month of October it was 10,000. The biggest piece of that was the superintendent and assistant superintendents. There's an association they belong to, and it's the fee is based on how many students you have, and it's a compilation thing, so we pay a little more than the smaller school districts, but that's the state and national associations for them. And going down, there's not too much else. The HR, the advertising line is an HR. Paid, I think, about $2,800 to the website we use to look for teachers. That's the one most teachers will look to. Other than that, right at the end of the page, it's the regular transportation services. And we've sort of caught up now with October, November, so those costs are in through the month of October. So we should be sort of 1 month behind going forward. Same goes on top of page 3 for the special ed transportation services. That's a higher number because we have the first student buses and we also have the outside providers that bring the students to the out of district. Those are very expensive when you look at it as an individual student. Tuition out of district is moving along. We have a good process in place to keep track of that now. And we did actually have a student move out that was a resident student, so there's going to be a significant savings from that point of view. Okay, supplies and materials, nothing too much there. I mean, this is the standard process and supplies that are purchased. The educational supply number was very high in November, but I mean, it's still 63% for the year. So I'm not too worried about that. Other expense indirect cost allocation, that's the grant transfers. We've had to spend a lot of time catching up on setting up new grants. We've had turnover in staff there. I think we're in a good place. We're putting in a new process, getting more people involved. And so that the grant people in the finance area in the district will be working on a more regular basis with the grant managers, bringing a better linkage up front when the grant is set up so that both parties truly understand what the spending's going to be. And then if it changes, each party can see that change and make better use of the funding. But like I said, there's been a lot of turnover with the people involved with the grants school-wide. The directors, the person that did the billing and working for me left. So, but I think we're in a lot better shape. We'll be in a lot better shape in about a month. We should be in great shape, and then we have a plan going forward. And then the equipment, not too much there. Early spend in the beginning, in the summer, obviously. If you look right on the last page, you see the debt service is in September, the payment of $454,000. That is the annual payment we make related to what Mr. Davey was talking about. So that equipment. So that's what the annual payment is. 260 of that is the principal, and 194 is the debt. The other debt service in there is what we pay for our copiers on an annual basis. So those, you won't see any more charges in that line for the rest of the year. And so far it looks okay. I have that one line to check on, but all in all, I think we're in decent shape at this point in time in the year.
Doesn't work. Any questions?
Do you think we might be able to get an update on that line with the 400,000 on Monday? Or
Yes.
it'll be next month? Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now we'll go on to the transfer reports.
Okay, transfer, there's not too many, it's 2 months, but there aren't as many transfers at this time of year versus the spring when there's voluminous. The first one is from the athletic director, some of the rental costs for, for athletics, we rent gymnastics, the hockey teams, and the swim teams. They all have outside rental costs. So those costs went up a bit, too much, but they did go up, and so she's moving money from the officials line down there to cover those costs. The next one is Mount Pleasant, and they had some issues with playground repairs, and Mr. Lassard, who's security as well as safety, he takes a look, and there was equipment the kids were using that needed immediate, or they wouldn't be able to use it. So Mount Pleasant decided to use some of their operating budget to fix it. You have obviously seen where PTOs come forward and do significant changes, but this was more repairing the existing equipment. And then there's another Mount Pleasant, it's only $790. They needed a new lunch table, so they took it out of their conference line and they put it to furniture to buy that. The Franklin Street pre-K program at the Franklin Street building, they're moving subscriptions and testing and ed supplies, some money from those into office supplies because they have more need there at this point. The next one, which is 11,000, this is something that in the budget, when we budgeted for the summer school, the Power Solar summer schools. The invoices come all in one invoice and we charge it all to contracted services. We had broken out the budget into multiple lines. So going forward, we'll just budget it all in one line. We won't have to do this. That was just to pay the invoice accurately. And the last one, which is a large one, when we had the data issue where we were basically hacked by that, we took our student information system and moved it up onto the cloud, and that's where it will be going forward. So from a security point of view, it makes all the sense in the world, but that costs more money to do it that way than the way we were doing it hosting. So a lot of this happened, if you remember, it was in the spring. It happened after the budget was already approved at our end. And then, so the invoice came in this year, and it had the increased cost for the cloud support, and there was also some adjustments they made with the software to strengthen the security there too. So we didn't get a chance to get it in the budget. I reached out to the city. The city said, yes, they do. They put together some funding to cover the cost. There's still some costs associated with that issue. So they need to appropriate a few more funds, but they told me we will pay this invoice, but we couldn't wait. So I took the money from the heating fuel account until they get the money, and then when they give it back, I'll move it back to heating fuel. So, but that was the cost of that invoice, $53,000. Going forward, it won't be that much. It'll be less than that, but it'll probably be about half that.
Bless you, bless you. Do you have any questions? Oh, bless you.
That's nothing to sneeze at.
Okay, so if there's no questions, then I'll move to accept the FY '24 October, November transfer report.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Anything else?
So,
I just want to say, Mr. Donovan, it's been a pleasure working with you for 4 years. You too, Ms. Brown, on this committee.
I agree. This is my last committee meeting ever.
Yeah,
Yeah, the 1-2 punch.
yeah, we'll see what happens now. But anyway, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. And we are adjourned at 7:09. Thank you.